Journeyman is an overused statement. Sometimes it's looked at as a negative, as a positive. In professional wrestling, it is a positive for the most part. Professional wrestling, as Larry Zbyszko, are like Jedi Masters. The longer you do it is when you become more masterful at the skill. I'm talking with someone here who, in my opinion, is becoming more and more of a master every day, transcending from in the ring to commentary to being a trainer in the tri-state area, and someone who, in my opinion, is one of the most entertaining talents and unsung heroes in not just the tri-state area, but the country. Ladies and gentlemen, the following conversation is scheduled for one fall. My guest at this time, Colossal Mike Law.
Hey, Cheyenne, thanks for having me, brother.
Absolutely, man. This is a pleasure. I kind of got, which I'll say often as you see more episodes of this conversation podcast, whatever the hell it is I'm doing. I got the Stone Cold syndrome with the Undertaker. You know, I know you, but I don't know much about you. You know, I known you for a long time, but I really don't know you. You know, type of thing going on. Besides the fact that we could pass for cousins if we stood next to each other.
That is true.
So how many years now have you been wrestling?
So I started training in '98 in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. So that was 15 years old. I would say my pro debut was back in 2000, 2001.
That's a big gap.
Yeah, it's a huge gap. Well, let me just tell you, and this is something I'm going to get into as far as like I love modern wrestling. It's not, but the idea that opportunity wasn't just given to you, like, oh, you're gonna train for 6 months, you're on. You know, it wasn't like that. You know what I mean? You really had to bust your ass back in that time. So yeah, there was a big gap between me starting in '98 training and me wrestling professionally. It's because it wasn't just given to you. You had to earn. You had to get your ass kicked. You had to kick ass, and you know it was definitely a different era of doing things. But just to answer your question, so 23 years. This coming August, it'll be 23 years. Jeez.
This may sound like a silly question, but in that gap from when you started to your first match, did you do things such as ref, ring crew, pick up jackets, timekeeper? Did you do all those things that predominantly you will do in your training?
Ring crew. And when I tell you, listen, I know I've gotten stronger throughout the years, but I'm telling you, the ring that we had in Arena Puerto Rico was built in 1973 or something like that. I mean, it was a stiff ring. But I remember,
was it made of wood?
It was made of a lot of things, but I do remember specifically, like, just everyone talking about it being a very stiff ring because it wasn't like you could just go in there. It had the spring in the middle, and which was like a death trap for a lot of people. Like once they started doing the flexi beams, that became a lot better for the ring and for the talents and the wrestlers. But ring crew, setup, breakdown, bring the ring up and down the stairs to a venue, whatever. It was just the norm. Like it was just paying your dues. You know, I tweeted a few days ago, know the difference between paying your dues and being taken advantage of. And I think, and I want to know that and say that I was definitely brought up the right way. I don't believe that I was 15 years old when I started training professionally. I couldn't wrestle in the state of New York anyway, because you needed a license at that point. And I didn't have my first paid pro match until I was like 18, I want to say. It was in New Jersey for NWA Over the Top. And
wow.
Way back when.
Yeah. Because I remember, and I had this conversation with a future guest of mine, with Gino Caruso. Like, I consider myself a fair student of the game, not just of pro wrestling, but of the independents. So the quote that I always go back to is from Mick Foley, that there was an era where we were all marks for the magazines. So there were a lot of tri-state feds, predominantly New Jersey, that made the magazine. Inside Wrestling, PWI. So anytime a fed gets thrown at me and it hits the magazine psyche, I'm like, oh yeah, because I would hear these things. Like that's how I discovered Metal Maniac. Metal Maniac was in PWI.
Metal Maniac, yeah.
Right? Metal Maniac was in PWI in like 95 and 96. And I remember the writing was so brilliant because they hyped this up as this incredible feud with Jimmy Snuka, who at that time obviously hadn't, the last big feud he had was Morocco 10, 15 years prior.
Right.
So, but, I would hear these things and not realize how close I was to wrestling. Because when you're a kid, you think, oh, WWE's coming to town and that's it. But what you don't know is that weekend, someone's going to be out, bumping and grinding for you. Well, bumping and grinding in one way, but then there's also wrestling. But yes, with consent. So here's the thing: you've been training for that long, and now you yourself are a trainer. At the Fallout, what's that like? Were you a guy like, I don't want to be a trainer? Like, what am I going to teach these kids? Did you like, oh, does that mean I'm done? How were you approached? Because it's also a huge compliment. I know Joe Kim back when he was an editor. He's always been very nice to me. He's always been very wonderful. Let's talk that. Were you like, I don't know if I'm ready for that? Where were you when you were asked?
I will say that the first thing, and I'm not going to speak on it, I'm speaking solely on my psyche and my behalf, that the mentality is that if you get asked to be a coach, is that, wait, am I like, does that mean it's over for me? Like, is this like this is moving on in and out of the spotlight, you know? And I will say that I had been asked by a few places to be a trainer and a coach. But I also felt like I had not, even now, like as much as I've, people like, oh, you've done some cool things, you've wrestled some great talent, you've wrestled in 3 different countries and blah, 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 and all these, accolades. I still don't feel that I've accomplished a lot of things that I want to. Because I don't, that's the mentality of somebody who just always wants to win. And I don't think it's a bad thing. You're never satisfied. You know what I mean? Like, but with that being said, that was a mentality I had. I was like, oh, wow. Like when Joe Kim asked me, he goes, I remember him saying, how far do you live from Long Island City? And I thought honestly, he was to book me for Battle Club, because Battle Club, back when it was owned, I think by Carl Saristi originally.
That's what I remember.
Yeah.
Owning it before Joe Kim got involved. Sure.
And I don't know what I was booked for a Battle Club show, and maybe when Joe Kim took over, but I had double booked myself in Ohio like an idiot, and I couldn't make that event. And I think that
subconscious mistake,
right? And sometimes you make these kind of like, you put these scenarios in your head, and you're like, oh wow, does that mean like after I wasn't booked after at all by Battle Club? And so when he approached me about it, I was like, oh, this is kind of rough. Like, so you want, like, I just thought it was like, my mentality was like, so I'm not good enough to be on the event, but I could be I didn't take it the way Joe Kim, knowing in my heart and soul, and being as close to as I am now.
And was it through text?
I thought it was through a phone call.
Oh, okay. Because I was gonna say, if it's through text, that's the worst to talk about any office positions.
I think initially it was a text, and then we got on the call together. But let me just tell you, man, I had been offered at least 2 to 3 other times to be a coach at places, and I did not feel at that time that I was ready or wanted that to be the case, and I also wanted the reputation of somebody that I think, in my opinion, has a great reputation, Joe Kim Morales. And specifically for the type of talent that we work with. And I think that's something that that really spoke to me a lot. And I'll tell you, man, it's been a great time. I'll say that it's been one of the most rewarding things that I've done in my entire career, has been able to coach talent that are, starting to make a headway for themselves. You know what I mean? And that's what it is to me. It's like, I guess part of my mom. She wanted to be a teacher, and she taught like Sunday school and stuff like
God bless her.
And yeah, thank you. And I think that part of that is what lends to my experience now in training and teaching, along with fellow coach ref Stephen Dumang, who also helps a lot. He's got a great mind for this thing.
My buddy Clown Shoes, who I love. Do you know that story?
I don't. What? Maybe, but you know what?
We were riding back. Oh gosh, it's Stephen Dumang, me, AJ Pan, and Chris Shady Torres, which is the carload, right?
That is a carload.
Coming back from an Upper Limit wrestling show in the summer of 2021, I think, maybe 22, and we're coming back and we're driving from this town from Boonton, New Jersey, and we're driving back from Boonton, and so we're driving back, and of course in the car ride, AJ's like, "Come on, let's go to the bar. Let's go to the Skinny. Come on." and I'm trying to go home because I summertime. I'm already wiped. I'm like, nope, I'm going home. He's like, come on, come on. Yeah. I said, hey, he's like, come on, Steve's gonna go. I bet you I get Steve to go. No, If Steve goes, you have to go. He lives in Long Island. So Steve is like, you're not gonna go to the bar? Come on, I'm going to the bar. You know how he's like, his sales pitches, he screams at you.
Yeah.
Come on, bro, I'm never here. You gotta go to the bar. So now Shady, who lives in my neighborhood, also is like, all right, if you go, I guess I'll go. So we agree. All right, whatever. Drive. Go to the bar. Just drive. If not, I'm gonna leave. We're like 5 blocks from the bar in the Lower East Side, and we're crossing Grand Street, and some guy just turns in front of your brother. Just comes, clips him off, tries to catch a light, and turns illegally as we're crossing. And for some reason, don't ask me why this is your brother's response. He comes out and he goes, hey, what the fuck is your problem, Clown Shoes? so the car goes.
How did he know the kind of shoes the man was wearing?
The car goes from immediate worry and danger to the biggest pop at Clown Shoes. Who the fuck says that?
That's great.
Yeah. So Steve doesn't say it anymore, but me and AJ will all the time. Hey, stupid. Hey, Clown Shoes. You know. Yeah.
That
because your brother got hot. That right. That's the other part. That your brother got hot. He's like, fucking guy cut in front of me. Was he fucking stupid? And then 8 is like with 2 O's. Yeah, fuck him, Clown Shoes. It just went off into this rant. And I said, okay, I guess the first round's on me.
Hey, you guys made it safe. But I just think it's funny. Like, how did he know what kind of shoes that guy was wearing? He could have been
that's that and road rage to go right to a PG insult like Clown Shoes is.
I think it was just to calm the mood. Like it got really serious. I think it was his way to be like, okay, we're good, we're safe at least. I don't know, maybe.
No, he said that shit too quick, man.
It was too quick. It was too well.
He literally, hey, what the fuck, Clown Shoes? Like it's just so. It was as if he was waiting to say it all day.
Probably.
You know.
No.
Yes, my buddy Uncle Steven. Along your classes, when did you kind of get that selfish, like, oh, I could do this? Because not everybody's a great teacher, not just in general. Forget wrestling.
Yeah. I think it's when the students themselves, the trainees, were like kind of giving that like positive feedback. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a very open person when it comes to that relationship. You know what I mean? Like, I think to me, like, I need to know, like, if you guys are not learning or not getting it, like, what do I need to do to make sure that you do? You know what I mean? Like, I'm very hard on myself with that sort of thing. And I think,
great.
That's like, listen, I look back and I look back at when I was younger. I wasn't a great test taker. I wasn't the type of person, like, I would go into panic mode because I'd be like, oh, we got 40 minutes to complete this test and it's like 100 questions. Like, how the hell? You know what I mean? There were times I'd be like second to last person out, you know, and it wasn't because I lacked the intelligence. It's just because maybe things took me a little longer to learn, you know? And
sure,
I do know that in retrospect, there's probably things that I wasn't aware of or was, I wasn't like, I may have had some sort of inability not to pick things up quickly. But when I did them very well. You know what I mean? And that's same thing with wrestling, dude. I can't tell you that when I started wrestling in '98, so many people came and gone. But then guys like Quiet Storm came through, and he picked up like quick, dude. Like that guy was destined to go to Japan because just everything he did was that style. And then, he just picked it up quick, and I was just so envious because I just. You know what I mean? It took me a lot longer to get there.
You know what else too? When you're training for wrestling,
right. You
don't want to realize. You do not realize until you realize, as cliche as it sounds. But here's what I'm getting at. You don't realize until you realize how much of it is repetition. You think immediately tackle, drop down, body slam, whether it's the drills, the moves, the holds, you're gonna get that right away. The move you want to do the most is often the move you can't even pull off.
That's why I tell somebody, guys, it's like You're exactly right, man. And I didn't get that. I was I think stubborn, but the training, the system today in most schools, and I'll say this about the Fallout because
Yeah.
I would say, all the coaches kind of lend their flavor of how to do this thing. And that's the beauty of pro wrestling. Like whether it's the way Masha Slamovich trains or the way it's Steve Pena trains or Prince Ahmed or Steve or I, or Kira or Horisanti, all these people have their method to how you can go about doing things. And it's not necessarily, and that's my mentality. It's like, listen, I've always said, as long as it looks good and no one gets hurt, we're in a good point. We're going to be in a good spot. But I also realize that in the upper echelon of the business, that there are things that are going to be done a certain way that need to be brought to everyone's attention. So there's that. But I gained confidence once I got feedback, and I just felt good. I felt like you feel it, kind of like when you have a great match. It's like you leave it all out there, and it's like you don't have to ask anybody. You just feel it. You go,
yeah, you're gonna know. You're gonna know, and then you're gonna know if it's just okay, if it's a stinker.
Yeah.
For some reason, you might go out there and do a 4-star, and you'd be like, "You sure that was good?" It's us as performers. And being our own self-critics, we might get the standing O, and then we might come back like, that sucked, right? And everybody's like, you shitting me right now?
Listen, man, I'll say this, and this is a weird thing to say, but I have had the worst time watching I can't watch myself back. It's a very weird thing.
You have to.
I'm telling you.
I was the worst at that for years.
I have the worst. I was anxiety. Maybe it's anxiety, but I just don't. I don't know. I will pick apart everything. People, here's what advice I've given to younger talent. Find two people that are going to be fair and honest with you, with both the good and the bad stuff. It shouldn't be completely hey, that was shit and you need to do this, blah, blah, blah. It could be some, hey, oh, that was really good. And this could be better. Find two people that are just going to be honest with you and not yes you to death and make you think that everything you do is excellent, but also people that are going to tear you apart every time you watch your match. And for me, those have been Ref Steven Dumang and Azrael. I think those two guys, Azrael's been all over the place. As you know, he's, in my opinion, one of the best out there, man, and should be completely signed. With his love experience everywhere he's been to, Japan, Germany, etc., Ring of Honor. My brother Steve, who's ref with some of the best talents out there. I just think they're very fair with me, without being a complete burial. Because I'll bury myself, dude. I'll say it. If my hair's out of place in a match, I'll bury myself. If my gear is rolled off, there's something in there that needs to be a perfectionist. And I can't tell you the amount of times, Cheyenne, that I've not sent a match or sent a clip out there because even a little thing was off. My tape was hanging out, funny. And that's a weird shit, but it's really.
No, I get it. I could tell you this. I mean, not to just talking shop. I was like that for many years, especially when I first started.
Right.
But there are times
you have a great voice, by the way. So I'm not.
Thank you. But so I have this great voice, right? A lot of announcers do right now, especially in the indies. But so much of what I do is verbiage, right? I talk for a living, right? For wrestling. So yes, you'll get the feedback, but we have the luxury of not getting it in the headset, right?
Right.
So for in my eyes, at least, I have to watch it back, even if it kills me, because now it's oh, I caught it.
Gotcha.
Because now, depending on the wrestler, no matter who I pick, you're going to get one or two things. Man, I love the commentary of your match. It was so good. But it might have been good for your match. And then I might get the feedback for another match yeah, man, you tuned me out. I wasn't invested. A wrestler does not want to hear, well, the match had no storyline. I did the best I could. I kind of had to present to you what was presented to me. You have to hear yourself back, because the same way you're going to get the feedback, you're going to oh shit, I shouldn't have done that. Or I could have done this. So at least for my end, I recommend it.
No, absolutely. Listen, I tell believe me, there are certain things where I'm like, listen, I'll give you a prime example. Something as simple as hitting the ropes, right? Like,
right.
I was taught to hit the rope top rope hand, like the right hand on top rope.
Sure.
Feed the upper meaty part of your back to the top rope. Sky came into the States and started doing it where you take that left hand and you put it on the second rope in case the top rope snaps and you have something to hold on to. So that was something that he kind of introduced, and you see a lot more these days than you did back in the day. I don't subscribe to that, but that's the way I wasn't trained that way. But I understand the mentality as to why that makes sense. And so I tell people, I go, listen, certain people, some of your coaches will run the ropes that way. If that's the way it's supposed to be with them, then that's the way it is. But with me, I say do both, just so that we have a little bit of an idea of how this makes sense. You know what I mean? And I'm going to that sense when even though I don't do it that way, I've told same thing with viewing your matches. Watch your matches, just dissect them. See what it is that can be done better. What everything from their look to your entrance, all that stuff. But I give it to you, and I give it to the good commentators, because unfortunately there's a lot of terrible ones out there. And I'll be the first one to say it, man. Like I don't deal with it a lot today, but I've been in situations where the commentators just completely put themselves over and not put over the talent of the match. I just don't get that, dude. I don't get it. Like, this is your job, is to help enhance the talent that the fans are paying their money to see, and you're too busy putting yourself over, burying people. Like, I remember one time in Canada, this was a few years ago, the guys completely like fucking buried me, dude. Like I
You told me that. This was like right after the ECWA viral thing, right?
This was before the ECW, wasn't the chair thing, but this was probably before the pandemic. Well, it definitely was before the pandemic.
Yeah, because you told me the story in the car, the one of the two times we rode together.
Yeah, and it was like, dude, for those of you people who don't know, like, yes, Colossal Mike Law, the persona, I should say, is considered himself 6'7" inches tall, right? But then in reality, I understand my limits as far as my stature. But there's no reason to constantly like bombard the audience with that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yes, we fucking get it. They're not blind; they can see what they're seeing. And I just thought that they went to the well too many times, and that was just obnoxious, man. I go, dude, you guys suck. And then I didn't know who it was. I didn't know the guys and anything like that. But if I had watched it, this was going live. This was going live to tape. This was going on to the TV program that night. That match aired live on YouTube, sorry, and then the rest of the show aired on their TV station. I definitely would have called those guys out, because I would like, what the fuck are you guys doing?
Yeah.
I mean, you have one job, but
I feel like, look, I get it. I'm only in the indies. I have more TV experience than people know, but I don't like saying that because people get offended with credibility. But that's my thing. As a commentator, I feel like you get over by getting everybody else over. It's not it, in my opinion. It's not. Yeah, I add humor, I add wit, I do the innuendos. I'm a funny person. I do bring my personality to the table, but my personality is not the forefront of that table. The forefront of the table is whatever's presented to me in an 8 or 9 match card format.
Right.
And I have to facilitate that within the best of my abilities, whether the match does or doesn't have a story, if I have to create something, if it's 2 people for the first time, debuts. There's a lot of source material. Sometimes on the indies, unfortunately, there isn't. You do have that. That's the luxury that WWE has and AEW. There's always source material. Sometimes there's not for us. There's not. But that's the thing I'll tell you is, like, to me as a commentator, you'll be okay if you get everyone else over.
Words to live by.
But that's My opinion. I'm sure there's people that disagree with that, some of which you work with. Whatever. It is what it is. Now I wanna get into some factoids here, specifically about BCW, Brii Combination Wrestling.
Right.
First of all, it's not gonna look the prettiest, but boom, there it is. High definition editing here. Let me go inward.
There you
so
go.
It looks like I know
I
what
like
I'm
that.
doing.
You know what's funny? Like BCW,
I love that picture of you.
That promo picture. I think other than Battle Club one time, which I was looking through some old flyers and posters that I have in my basement. That picture, I did not realize. You know what I mean? It's just one of those pictures that I just never really used, and I'm glad BCW, picked the right one. Just has
Shout
a
out to
big
Brian
feel.
F, who does the graphics for
Brian F
BCW
is
and
in fact
many
the
feds.
man, and definitely very he's great at what he does, and so I'm happy that he's succeeding, and hope to see him do more down the line. But yeah, I mean, this is it, man, and this is like I think to me it's like a culmination of a lot of things with BCW.
Well, let me before we get to that, let me serve it up to you because I try to be as decent a journalist as possible. You go back to BCW all the way to its inception, 2016, yeah. I believe it's third or fourth show in BCW. Dangerous Intentions at the Elks Lodge, where you
EC Negro was the guy at that point, wasn't he?
That's right. And that was a 3-way tag team match, and you were part of the Pan Corps. You were associated with AJ Pan. And here you are now, because let's talk about your return, right? Let's start there. The Mama Pan show. The amount of pressure going into that alone, and that's like, oh, it's the main event. Like,
yeah.
Were you yourself like, if this is a one-off, I'm cool? Because the match in and out of itself was special, just like the evening.
Yeah, that was my mentality, man. I was like, you know what? I'm here to show my respect and love to not only, Mama Pan, but AJ himself, like outside of the business aspect of things, although I know we don't agree a lot of things, man. And that's not me. That's legitimately what it is. Like, there are things that he does that I don't agree with. There are things that I'm sure that I do that he doesn't agree with. And that's fine. But ultimately, it was to showcase the love and admiration and respect I have for Mama Pan, who was like my second mother, you know what I mean? And there was a lot of pressure, but like no one's going to put pressure on me like I'm going to put on myself, is what I'm saying. Like, I could be anywhere, and and it's been great to have been able to wrestle in the, for Ring of Honor, MLW, AEW, and and get opportunities to wrestle in 2 or 3 Super 8s and all that stuff, and debut for numerous companies. Like, but the pressure has always been from within. Like, am I going to be able to top the levels that I know I can go to? You know what I mean? Like, it's a mental struggle more than anything, and I'm sure that anyone whether you've been a comedian on stage, whether you've been a musician in concert, like that pressure to constantly outdo yourself or be at a level that you believe is acceptable, that's the pressure, man. And getting in the ring with a guy like Anthony Gango, like, we both are very aggressive. I don't get the credit for being a heavy hitter, although most people in the indies in the industry know that I'm a pretty heavy-handed.
Right.
But I knew that going into that I wasn't gonna leave that night without some sort of like marking or and then my lip got busted open with the corner turnbuckle. But I'll tell you right now, man, like the matches I have with Gangon are like, people don't realize the competitive nature of what we do because of how it's been bastardized. But that mentality of saying, I have to show everyone that, whether it's the fans of BCW, but more importantly, like AJ and Anthony Cole and the people in charge, that this shouldn't be a one-off. That I am someone that you guys should value and should have consistently on top. And I like, here's the thing, like, I was always taught to be humble, and the problem with being humble in the wrestling industry is that if you're too humble, it doesn't really help you. Like you have to have.
Yeah, you gotta have an ego. You do.
You have to have a bit of an ego, and I was just brought up from a different mentality of like give, and not take. And I did it. I've done it for 23 years, man. And I think my mentality has changed. That it's not about that anymore. Like I've given my fucking life for this business. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I've gone, and it all reads the same. Sleeping in the car, driving 15 hours for a $10 payday, come back home, work all like it's all.
Sometimes no payday because we came from that era.
Sometimes, listen, I was talking to a promoter about like about promoter stiffing and walking out, and I go, listen, I'm blessed because of this modern time. It hasn't happened. It happened once in DR, but then I got taken care of in the back end. But
wow,
that's another story. But
okay.
I will say that I've given, and I think my issue in this point in time, it goes, how much more does the fucking industry want from me, dude?
Right.
Like, how much more can I give before you guys start reciprocating? And it goes back to everything from this match with Daniel Alexander to BCW to, like I talked to you before offline when I talked about, like, helping each other out. Like, there's been a gap of people that I was like, man, I'll retweet this, I'll share this, and then it doesn't get reciprocated. And I go, I was always told, don't expect anything. Well, guess what, man? I kind of do expect something at this point.
Yeah.
I think it's only, like, I think it is fucking fair that if I'm sharing your stuff, that you do the same for me, man, because that's how we all grow. But if people want to eat and let others starve, then go do your own shit. I don't care.
And wrestling can be like a relationship where you feel like you're giving your partner everything, and then what are you really getting back? You do have those moments where you look at wrestling that way. It is.
Yeah.
If you haven't experienced it, you will at some point. Whether you're an announcer, a ref, a wrestler, or this or that, wrestling is in fact like a relationship in that sense, where there are times where you're like, I'm just pumping so much in and she doesn't notice me, in that sense. But we digress, because here's the thing. You come in for the Mama Pan show, you rock the joint, and then you get set to task to take intern Jerry to school. And you do exactly that. You humble intern Jerry. That allows him to then become accepted by the BCW faithful. But then you're set to task to lead the charge in tag team action featuring young intern Jerry and Daniel Alexander. And here we are now. Let's talk about that, which led to explosivity with you on the live mic.
I don't really, I think it all, you get it to a point, and again, it goes back to what we were talking about. Like, you constantly give to an industry that sometimes is so willing to take and not give back that you get tired of that shit, man. And like this Saturday, it's all about that, man. It's when I said that this Saturday is not just a statement; it's an indictment on this new generation of wrestlers. This is what it is. It's more important. Like, for me, it's like, I was brought up a different way, and I'm not saying it was perfect, but I also say that, like, the level of humbleness that we were instilled was way different. Sure. Like, a lot of cats walk around like, dude, like, you just got to be delusional to think that you couldn't catch one if it turned out to like happen. And Daniel Alexander's one of those guys that's like, he has a lot of energy. He's constantly on a high.
One of the best new talents out there, Daniel Alexander.
I won't even deny that. Like, when I tell you that I don't necessarily even have a problem with Daniel Alexander as a person, as a competitor, it's the idea of a Daniel Alexander. That idea of like, let me get famous quick. That mentality of like, let me just try to run over like
that people. instant gratification. Do you feel Daniel Alexander represents the immediacy of the current generation?
And it's mind-boggling, because as quick as you get up there, it's very quick to go back. I've seen it time and time again. I've been through several generations of it happening. I've seen talent that were on top, and then they get and you never hear from them again.
Right.
And like, Daniel Alexander has to realize there's levels to this shit, man. There's levels to this game. As I tell students too, there's levels to what we do. And I think for me, man, I'm done with giving, dude. I am so done with that shit. And now it's me taking back what is rightfully mine, what I deserve. Like people are like, oh, like like how can you have an ego? How can you not be humble? Dude, where has it gotten me? Where
Right.
has being humble gotten certain people when I have like literally been good? Like I've always done business the right way. And my track record speaks for itself, dude. And if anyone ever has heat with me, that's heat they have on their own merit. I have been very respectful and I've always tried to accommodate everybody. But that has to end because unfortunately you give people, an inch, they take a foot. They take, you know what I mean? It's just like I can't go off these next days.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but
no worries, no worries.
As I'm hearing it more, I'm trying to see it from your POV, especially following the 6-man tag team match where was your initial interaction with Daniel. Do you think that Daniel underestimates you and perhaps your generation?
Yeah.
As a performer, do you feel as if Daniel sees you as easy pickings almost?
I mean, I hope not. I'm sure the shots I caught him with in that brainbuster would indicate different. But if he for a second believes that, then this Saturday is going to be a harsh reality check for him. I don't like the fact. Listen, I'm not lie to you, dude. I didn't even want to be there, bro. But I put on my game face and I showed up to do business and be ready because that's what I do, man. Like, I don't care listen, there have been times where I've been in terrible shape. There have been times where I've been in the best shape. There have been times that I've been injured. I have a fractured toe that I injured at the ECWA Super 8 in Philadelphia in 2019. And it's just acting up now. You know what I mean? Like, who would have known that, like, this many years later, like, it's hard to walk on this foot. But ultimately, when I go out there, man, I go out there with the intent of making everyone know that it's catch me now, see me now while you can, because who knows how long, you know what I mean? I could go another 20 years, but who's to say that I decide next year it's time to hang it up, you know what I mean? But Daniel Alexander should never rest on that. Like, I don't know, you'd have to be a complete idiot considering all I've done, like, and the people I've wrestled and I've been in the ring with.
Well, that goes back to my point from earlier. The one thing I will agree with is that I do feel as if newer wrestlers from 2020 to now, from that post-pandemic era, kids that were training in 2019 and such, they're students of the game, but they're not students of their environment. And I think that is a massive hindrance to their mentality, training in the ring and day-to-day life, because if you can recite to me every single one of the WrestleMania main events, then you should be able to tell me the history of the company that you just asked to be booked for.
Does that, you know what I mean? You should know, like, listen, I'll say this, like,
and I love Daniel Alexander as a performer. I think you two can low-key have the show stealer. Low-key, I really think it's possible. Just knowing your styles the way I do, I think it's very possible, and I think it's going to be the match that no one's expecting to be away.
But that's just been it too, man. That's another thing that I never understood. As many like matches where I've had, and it's not knocking what you just said, but it's kind of the mentality that a lot of people have had throughout the years. It's like almost a surprise that Mike Law can have a fucking banger. It's like crazy. Like, dude, like, just because, listen, there are times where I have not put stuff up because I will tell you that there's things I go, I didn't like the way I looked, or, I'm just very self-deprecating. I'm a perfectionist, man. If something is off, it won't go online. It won't. I'm a very, like, anything you see me do is something that I will say, hey, that's freaking good, man. Or like I said, I'll send over to Az. I used to send over to AJ and Steve and be like, yo, this is what do you guys think of this? You know what I mean? And that's the litmus test for me. But with that being said, like, dude, I've had bangers with plenty of people, man. Like, whether it was Joe Gacy, I wrestled Joe Gacy, at BCW a few years back, and that was with fucking food poisoning.
I remember that.
Tier 1, when I wrestled Tier 1, we had a 4-way with Anthony Green and MJF and Tony Deppen. Like, I've had, and even most recently at Battle Club, like, it's just like, it's very odd to me when people are like, have that mentality. Oh, Mike Law, what a great, like, dude, have you guys out there watching? Like,
right.
Just because I don't regurgitate that shit like 24/7 doesn't mean that I haven't had like bangers. And I know that this guy can't consider himself like 1-800 bangers, Daniel Alexander, but like that's the competitiveness, man. That's the competitive mentality that I have. Like, I need to let everyone know that what you just witnessed wasn't a match; it was an event. You know what I mean? And that's the same thing with Gangone. I'll probably show that to anybody.
I think the biggest takeaway here in terms of your singles match with Daniel Alexander for Brii Combination Wrestling is that Daniel Alexander has to be aware that not only is Mike Law competing with Daniel Alexander, but he's competing with himself. I think that right there is the takeaway for that contest. I can't stress enough. It's Brii Combination Wrestling. It is this coming Saturday, hailing from the Mecca, 106 Bergen Avenue, Richfield Park, New Jersey, Saturday, January the 20th. Doors at 4, bells at 5, and we're going to be there staying alive because welcome to 2024. Welcome to the new year. It's 1-800 bangers versus the king of the short kings, the colossal one himself, Mike Law. My first guest on the following contest is
not your last either
for one goal. I sure as heck hope not. I'm really excited. I'm so glad we got to do this. I can't thank you enough for your time because I learned very early on in life when it comes to friends, the friend money's great, but when they give you your time, that's when I'm always rooting for you. I'm always thinking of you. I always look to you for advice and stuff like that. I gotta be a journalist. I'm not pulling for anybody in particular, but I am pulling for you two to steal the show, even from the main event. I'll put it to you like that. That's where I'm at. I don't want to hang my hat, doing it the best that I can. But thank you so much, Mike Law. Plug those social media outlets for everybody to go follow you.
I keep it very simple here, guys. Colossal Mike Law on X. It's on Instagram. TikTok's a completely different thing for me. You're not going to be a lot of wrestling stuff, a lot more travel stuff there. I am going to be opening up some online stores soon so I can sell some merch. But until then, you will get the chance to buy them at any upcoming events that I'll be at. Brand new merch. I always do that. I am the king of merch. Rob Killjoy, I don't care what you're saying.
I was just going to say, hold on.
I am the king of merch in the indies. Take that to the bank all day, and I would gladly debate anyone on that one.
Yeah. Well, there's going to be no debate about it. You got to be there in Richfield Park this coming Saturday. Once again, the voice Cheyenne Ortiz. That is the colossal one, Mike Law. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. This has been the voice Cheyenne Ortiz.